Hello, everyone.
Hi, Chris. Do you want to unmute yourself? Hi, Danita.
Didn't even realize I was on mute. Sorry.
Hi, Chris. Hey,
Hello.
Thank you guys for making time. This is real casual. We're not live or anything.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do is I have it recording. Is that okay with you, Chris?
That's fine.
And that way I can edit it and take some pieces and put it with some other conversation when we can announce it. And but I just wanted to give you a chance to talk because I'm so thankful that you shared your experience, because that's just what helps people like me to understand and put ourselves in your shoes, in your skin. So
Right.
I pulled it up. I don't know if you want to just kind of talk us through it. That's kind of what I have in mind, and tell us what it felt like. And
Oh, I could have, waxed poetic straight from the dome about this kind of stuff. I mean, it's not the first time, and haven't seen comments at the Lake Highlands group, but I pretty much put this viral across all of my anti-racism groups that I'm affiliated with, including the At Large Be the Bridge organization. And this thing kind of took off like wildfire. And there's so much echoes and so much agreement and sentiment, particularly from African American motorists, as this is a commonplace kind of thing. And we just kind of know what's up.
will you start
So
at the
for those,
beginning and tell us what happened?
right, it was real simple. I was grocery shopping in my city. Decided last minute, let me go to Costco. So instead of making my normal route home, I took a different route out of the lot. Ended up passing a major intersection in one of the neighborhoods. On the way to the next major intersection, I noticed that there was a cop pulled over to the side. It looked clearly to me like he was trying to catch people in a speed trap, the guns out, in the whole deal. So I'm like, oh, okay. So everybody slows down to the speed limit, which they do, and I slow down as well. And then I notice, oh, he made it right into the right hand lane. And so, whatever. I keep going and I'm moving along. Next thing I know, I take a glance in the rearview mirror. Bam, cops right behind me. And when that happens, you move into an entire sequence of mental gymnastics and preparations and precautionary measures that you take. You start thinking to yourself, okay, let's make sure we're watching the speed limit. Let's make sure that we don't do anything erratic. Um, Anytime while I'm driving, my phone is on some sort of case to sit on, or for whatever reason, my phone was not on the case. And so I'm thinking, whatever you do, don't answer that phone. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now that this cop is behind me, is he just going to turn or are we going to do the dance? And once the cop didn't turn or move away, it was obvious that it was dance time. Now, what I am calling the dance is um, the act in which this police officer or any given police officer will tell a car for any given amount of time in order to run their license plates. You run the license plates to see who the car is registered to. Should there be any unpaid traffic tickets or warrants or anything of that nature? Anything not quite on the up and up shows up on that car, then all that officer will need is a justifiable reason to pull the driver over. And I knew I didn't have any of that, so I kind of didn't trip. But it made me, not sort of, it made me very, very angry because to me it was just so obvious that that's what was going on. And we passed one major intersection, cops still there. Second major intersection, cops still there. And so I'm thinking to myself, all right, this is really, really getting ridiculous. So let me just make my right hand turn onto the street that I'm going to since I'm headed to Costco. So I hop in the left hand lane, and then the cop moves in the left hand lane behind me and just like, oh my goodness, for real? Really? So we make the left turn, and at this point, I'm just furiously going off and muttering junk just out loud, just what the heck is this? This is so stupid. This is so ridiculous. And then it's okay, just maintain. And so eventually we get to another intersection. Poof, poof, cop drives off. Obviously, they did not find anything. They couldn't find anything on my record because I'm an upstanding driver and I handle my business and I do my thing. So he wasn't gonna find nothing on me anyway, or my wife, and because we're straight up solid, legit people, you know. So they drive off, and I'm exhaling the whole deal and all of that, but I'm just running all these different scenarios in my head about how many individuals and how many people of color have been subjected to that. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in the pain of just that, I mean, because the vehicle I was in was a minivan. So if I was able to deduce and put two and two together, maybe that cop saw that I was an African American driver. And then that's what led the officer to make their swoop behind me and to do the tailing and to do the checks and the running and all 9 yards. And yeah, I'm thinking to myself, I got to share this with everybody.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of being followed, I'm like, this is going to have to go online because people need to know. It's
So
sorry, it's ridiculous, it's lame.
as you're telling your story, Chris, I'm reliving mine.
I'm sure you are.
I had the same thing happen.
Yeah, tell us, Danita.
I'm just driving, drop my kids off at practice, about to run some errands, and I finish running my errands, and then I pull out of the Walmart, and this is when I was living in Mississippi, and
Wow.
Rankin County, where I lived, it is predominantly white, but it's also predominantly racist. But that's where we live. That's where we have lived for years. And so I'm on my way back to the school, pick my kids up, and I noticed the police officer pulls out. And I was like, oh, he's going to get you, because there was a car that just shot right past me. And so the car went past me, but he didn't move. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's following, he's right behind me. And so, like Chris said, I'm in, okay, it's go mode. It's time to become the best actress in the world. I got my hands at 10 and 2.
Yeah.
I got my hands at 10 and 2. I'm not trying to look either way. I don't want to make any sudden moves. I don't want to.
You rehearsing your code switch voice?
Yeah, I don't want to pick my phone up. I don't want to give him any indications that I'm doing anything that he may think is fearful or I'm reaching for anything. So I'm just, straight, this stone face, straight eye looking. And he followed me probably for, I want to say about 3 miles. And I'm just terrified the entire 3 miles. And I'm like, oh my God, when are you going to get from behind me? It's something else you could be doing. And then there it goes, the boop boop. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. At this point, I know I'm driving too slow. So I pull over, and he walks up to the car, and he lets the window down and asks for my license and my insurance. And I said, I'm going to get my phone. He said, for what? I said, I'm going to show you my insurance. And he's like, we don't take insurance on the phone. Yeah, you do, but that's okay. I got the paper form too, but we do take digital insurance. But I'm not gonna argue with you. So I go in the glove compartment, get my insurance card out, And then he says, is this car stolen? I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, no. And they're like, who's Mary Jones? I said, that's my mother. Well, what's your name? And I'm thinking to myself, you have my license. My name is on the license. What are we doing now? And I tell him my name, and I said, I'm on the insurance as a driver. The car is in my mother's name. After even having all of the information match up, he still goes back. And I'm sitting on the side of the road, probably 15 minutes or so. And I'm like, what is he possibly doing? And he comes back up. He gives me my stuff, and he walks away. He doesn't say, I'm sorry. He doesn't say, have a good day. He doesn't say anything. And I'm still sitting there because I don't know what's happening, if he's done with me. And he drives on off. And I'm like, what the frick just happened? And I'm thinking to myself,
Right.
this is insane. And so as you're telling your story, I'm kind of like reliving mine. And I was like, oh my
Right.
God, did you get over? You know,
See, Laurie, there's so many of these stories that are lived out. And see, when you tell that story, I go back to my college days in Louisiana when that happened. Is I'm driving with my girlfriend along on the road. All of a sudden, Louisiana State Trooper just does a beeline, put the lights on. They pull my stuff out and they run the whole thing. Of course, I'm originally from California and was living in California, going to college in Louisiana. So what I saw was California plates. And so they run and they run and they run. And then finally, after they didn't find anything, I get told the reason why I was pulled over. One of my headlights was out. I'm thinking, you could have told me that from Jump Street. But you have to understand, Lowry, and others who are watching, is there is a cadence in a sequence that they're looking for at the end of the day. They're trying to find any infractions in their federal, state databases on African American drivers. And if they find anything that's on your license or on that car, then they can swoop you up in handcuffs and haul you into jail with no questions asked, just on the most basic, simple pull-over traffic infractions.
So,
Which is why they did not tell her straight up why it is she was pulled over.
yeah.
They just do it. They run what they run, and once they find anything, at least I got the courtesy of being told back in college that when I got pulled over, it was because I had a headlight that was out, but they didn't even bother telling her.
So, and Chris, was that true? Did you have a headlight out? I mean,
yeah.
So my question is, if, like he was running your plate, and Danita, maybe that's what the officer was doing to you too. If they do find something, but you didn't do anything, like Chris and Danita, you didn't do anything, but if they find something, they can't do anything about it at that point, can they? Because they didn't have a reason to pull you over. Do you know?
Oh, yeah, they will. Oh yeah.
If there's something on that vehicle, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, fine. Yes, they will. They will arrest you then and there. I have had a friend who, there was a speeding ticket on her car, but the court date has not passed. So, but there was a speeding ticket associated with her license, but her court date had not passed. And I'm privy to that information because I was going to go to court with her because she knew she wasn't going to have enough money. And so I was going to be there to make sure she gets some money, because if you don't have your money, guess what? You have a choice. You can pay then, or you can go with the bailiff.
So she got arrested just because she had a ticket?
Yeah, she was arrested with her kids in the back.
Every little minor infraction that is on your name, Larry, that is not covered on your driver's license or on the vehicle you are driving, if they can find the smallest little millisecond shred of anything, that is justifiable cause for them to run you in.
And I think
that is what we're dealing with.
This is why there's always an argument between people of color and white people, because white people love to say, well, if you were just follow his instructions and follow his guidelines, you wouldn't have gotten arrested, or this wouldn't have happened. But what structures and procedures and guidelines am I supposed to be following when I ask you something and then I get nothing from you?
No, I mean, 'cause I would never have been pulled over in the first place.
What if I had pulled off before he pulled off? He didn't say anything. He didn't say he was done. He didn't say, okay, have a good day. But I saw him get back into his car. Now,
if you pulled off before he pulled off, you wouldn't be here talking to us.
So
he would have emptied his clip, reloaded, and shot you some more.
It's that
That's just real.
It's that dynamic that we live in. My oldest was driving my truck home, and he called and he said, Mom, the police is behind me and I didn't do anything. And I said, where are you? And he said, I am coming to the house. And I said, no, tell me exactly where you are. And he said, I'm about to pass the school. I said, well, if you haven't passed the school yet, it's a Chevron. Pull into the Chevron. Here I come. So he pulls into the Chevron and I come up there. The police, by the time I get up there, the police are still there. They're still there. So what I do is I go into the Chevron, because this is community neighborhood, and I asked the manager of the store, can I leave my car here? I'll come back and get it in the morning. And he said, sure, that's fine, no problem. And so my son got in the car with me and we left the car there and we went on to the house, because it was like, why are you still sitting here? He's pulled into the convenience store. So you don't know if he intentionally was going to pull into the convenience store anyway, but he did. And he went into the store. So why are you still sitting here? Like that, we saw it. We saw Philando Castile. The officer told him to put his hands on the steering wheel. He put his hands on the steering wheel. Then he told him to get his registration out the glove box. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to keep my hands on the steering wheel, or do you want me to get my registration out the glove box? He said, I want you to get your registration out the glove box. When he reached to get his registration out the glove box, he then turned and asked him, give me your driver's license. He asked him again, what do you want me to do? Because I don't want to do anything that you may think is a hostile move. Give me your driver's license. He reached in his back pocket to get his driver's license after being told, and the officer unloaded his clip into his back, with his 2 children in the back of the car and his girlfriend in the passenger seat.
And you forgot one key point in that transaction, because I know it well. Mr. Castile lets the officer know that he is a licensed gun owner.
Yep.
And that that his weapon was on his possession, but he had zero intentions on doing anything to engage the officer. And in the course of, like Nita said, is of him following those police instructions. As soon as that officer heard gun, that panic and that quote that we hear all the time, in fear of my life, unload.
So what I think is important for someone like me to be hearing is that you all are in fear of your life when you're just being followed.
When we're driving.
Yeah, when you're driving. But
minding our business.
Yeah. And there's so many layers beyond that. When they've done that, and you won't ever know, Chris, what he was doing or looking for or whatever. And I feel like that's not fair. I feel like you should get some closure. Like you should be able to call up and say, who was this officer? What did he want? And Danita, the fact that he didn't apologize, he didn't know you were on your way to pick up your kids at school. So that layer is dehumanizing even in itself, just not being treated equally like a citizen, like I would be treated. But thank God you were okay. But it's not fair that beyond having to fear for your own life, you're just not treated with the same dignity and respect. And that you should—
On top of what you said, please understand this clearly, because I saw in our discourse you were suggesting that I should inquire to what the situation was all about and send my story out there. But there's another level of thing that you have as a white woman that Danita and I do not have, and that is privilege. In your privilege, you are allowed to make that query about what happened that day. It might get ran, it might not get ran. They might respond to you. Case closed. If I do that, if Danita does that, they start building a file that I am now the black driver in my city. She is the black driver in her city. License plate number thus and such and so.
And we are trouble.
Who had the audacity to try to question what it is that we are doing. So now let's pay a little bit close extra attention to every single move they make. And as a result, I might start getting pulled over just a little bit more frequently just because I have the audacity to open my mouth and say something. That is the risk that we and other people of color have that you don't. I'm not saying that any beef, anything against you, Laurie. That's just the reality of that world. Retaliation is a thing.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that because you're right. Like that's my natural instinct, and it may be yours too, but you've learned that you have to suppress that, and I've learned that I don't have to, and that's not fair, but you're so right. Thank you.
And it doesn't just happen to regular people. My father was pulled over and asked to get out the car, even after identifying himself as an officer, and still wanting to know. I remember it vividly, and I'm like, but he's a police officer. He works with you. But the guy was new and had no idea that he pulled over his boss. No idea, and no sense of remorse. Because when my dad asked, what did you pull me over for, son? He had nothing for him. I don't have to tell you anything is what he said. And I'm like, I'm just sitting there because I'm just like, oh, he's going, because, you know, I'm a child. I'm like, oh, he's going to get fired. You know, because I'm like, you do know that's your boss. You know, in my mind, in my little 15-year-old mind, that's what I'm thinking.
You can't say that out loud.
No, but in my little 15-year-old mind, that's what I'm thinking. And my dad he actually makes a radio call because my dad was in his unmarked car. And he actually makes a call into headquarters to see who my dad actually was. And before the call ended, there were two other officers there, and they were like, what are you doing? What's going on? I mean, and he sort of like has an introduction. And it's like, what the world? But so it doesn't matter. When you're out of uniform, you're black.
Yeah. Yeah. Who is remind me the woman that ended up being arrested and died in jail?
Sandra Bland.
Sandra Bland. Because she did what we're saying. She spoke up for herself in a way that got her in trouble, in a way that I would have done because she wanted justice for herself. And that's what happened to her. So that's what I thought of, Chris, when you were saying that. Yeah.
No.
Because you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, you know, as soon as she spoke up for herself and was trying to defend and show her righteous anger that any other human has a right to express for being in that situation, all of a sudden she is usurping authority. All of a sudden she is being resistant. She is not following the directions of a person in authority. So because she spoke for herself in her tone and that anger, that was such a perception of disrespect for authority, because this is a white cop that gave him the impetus and the motivation to not just arrest her, physically drag her literally out her car, slammed on the pavement to handcuff the whole thing, just because she had the audacity as a black woman to show her righteous anger to a white cop. And as you said, Laurie, and as so many of my white friends have said they've done the same things in those situations. I have a good friend who said that once she had a police issue and she was literally shouting four-letter words at the cop. And then that happened to her.
Right. And, I protest and a lot, but what we do, we make a video before our march, before our protest. My name is Danita Jones. I'm here protesting this. I do not have suicidal tendencies. I will not harm myself. For my parents, my family, they do know that I will not harm myself. I'm not in a mental state that I will harm myself. These are tapes that you have to make now because so much happens once you're arrested. Things happen. Oh, she hung herself. Oh, she took her life in prison, in jail. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But this is what has to be done for there to be justice. You have to go the extra step of the mile to protect yourself from those that are supposed to be protecting you.
Supposed to be protecting you.
So we're not here to solve the answers, figure out the answers, but I was reading some about advocates for and activists who are advocating for the separation of traffic officers from police officers with guns, and how white people feel like traffic officers and laws protect public safety, protect us, but how people who are Black feel that the very presence of traffic officers stopping you for things puts you at risk and makes you less safe. And so I don't know what the answer is, but it certainly is evident that you feel more targeted. And I don't know how, I don't know what the rules are for police officers. Like, do they have to get a certain number of people they arrest, number of people they ticket? And why should they be able to just follow someone because they're Black?
So they do have a status that they have to, a quota that they have to meet at the end of the month. I know that from my father of writing tickets. They do have to have a quota. But the issue in the Black community is when we decide that when the city and the council decide, and this is my opinion, they decide they're going to come in and bring in extra officers. This is my problem with that. Where were you before crime got out of hand in the other side of town? Where were you before then? Before crime hit the other side of town, there was no presence where I live. No presence at all. But because now the other side of town, the other side of 635 has had a rash of this and a rash of that. Now here you come swooping in as if you're doing something, but you're not here for us. You're here to protect the opposite side. Yeah. I was offended by the spectacle of the police officers and the city council up here on the corner. 20 plus officers decided, they were going to have a meeting, well, not an announcement on the news that we're going to install these cameras in participating businesses. Why did you have to do it on the corner that you don't even come in? You don't even operate over here, period. I reported a crime to myself by knocking on a window of an actual police officer, telling her something is happening over there. You need to go over there. She let the window back up and proceeded to do whatever it was that she was doing in the car. She never moved. She never went. But now all of a sudden, you need a presence over here. Why? Because when you're over here, you don't do anything. If I can walk up to a police officer's car and tell them and point them in the direction where a crime is happening, and I've seen it with my own two eyes, and you do not move, you're letting me know you don't care anyway. So why all of a sudden are you here? because you're not here for us. You're not.
And you
You're
feel like
here
maybe
They're here for that building. They're here for the building because that building is someone's property or business that they built up by their own bootstraps, which is the quote that is loved to be said. And that's millions and millions and millions of dollars that's bringing income and capital to the city. So if you juxtapose the value of this edifice is much more important to the powers that be than this life that could be getting killed because of the crime that Janita is trying to notify you about, officer. And so you pick and choose, you pick and choose. Am I going to stand and defend this multi-million-dollar edifice? Or am I going to get out and stop, this crime going on and let's cross my fingers that nobody does get killed? Or even if it does, I have the luxury of altering my police report to making sure that I don't lose my skin when having to give a report about it. But yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Danita, do you feel, I mean, it sounds to me like you feel maybe less safe by having more of an officer presence in your neighborhood.
Yes, because they're not here for me.
What do you mean? That you're saying they're there for the property owners or to make people
They're
like
not here for
feel
me.
better?
They're here for show. They're not here for me. It's a presence. You're not here for me. I will probably, if I were to visit you, I'll probably see a police presence more in your area than I would in my own. I don't see a police presence in my area until crime stats go up. You immediately come across 635 because apparently all the criminals live across 635. They don't live on the other side.
Yep.
So you come over here because this is somewhere, I guess this is where all the criminals live. So you're going to come over here and patrol the streets. But when the people really need you, you know where to be found. And so, no, you're not here for me. Because when we see you, it's intimidation. It's intimidation.
Nervous that they'll do something that might harm you or your children instead of helping you when they are around.
Yeah, because it's merely harassment at this point. Because
I don't even think it's a case of nerves. I don't think it's a case of nerves at all. This is so ingrained for us as African Americans in our culture that unfortunately, by the time you're 18 years old, you're numb to it. By the time you're 15 years old, you're numb to it. Because it's just so obvious. It is just so obvious. When you see that elevated police presence, you kind of know, you know exactly what's going on. You know exactly what's up. And it's not designed to make anybody really feel, air quote, safe at the end of the day.
Except someone like me, maybe. I think the bottom line and the basic question is, we know that policing in our country was invented to regulate the movement of Black bodies to keep white people in power and to keep white people feeling safe. And that without the police presence, white people, some might not feel safe. And that's the question. Can we feel safe? Can white people like me feel safe without that presence to the degree that it is now? Because it makes people like you feel unsafe. And so what do we do about that dilemma? I know some of the answers are reallocating, what we're saying, refund public safety. And like Danita's saying, she was thinking in her mind when she was pulled over, there are people that need your help right now. They should be using those resources to actually be helping people that actually need it, not pulling over sweet little you who's on your way to pick up your kids at school. So I don't know what the answer is, but that's what I see the dilemma is.
The answer is going to be involved in these hard conversations that nobody's willing to have. It's like if you're gonna in a perfectly sane world, we should be able to sit down with the powers that be who run law enforcement and authority to really sit down and have these conversations. And I would even say, knock off this veneer and this notion that these have to be peaceful conversations, because they're not going to be peaceful conversations.
Yeah.
If I had the ability to share my story, if so many others had the ability to share our stories and they would just give the answers like Danita gave because she watched her father on the job. I mean, if they had the courage to come right out and say, we got to fill our monthly quotas here. And a lot of that is filling our monthly quotas. And if we find what we find in anything that's escalated, if they would just tell truth instead of just sending the constant narrative and smoke screens through their verbiage that what we do is this, that, and the other, and it's all about trying to make sure we have safe communities. No, don't BS. Level with me. Tell me straight up. Take ownership of the individual, systemic, and historical racism in America that is involving how you are air quote protecting and serving certain aspects of what you feel is community.
So, and Danita, do you want to say something to officers like your dad who never pulled his gun in how many years of service? Because there are good officers. Yeah, they go into it to help people. Pull over the drunk drivers. Do keep us safe on the roads. But what do they have power to make those kind of decisions autonomously and not feel like pressure to follow you?
Yeah. My father was an officer from the age of, I want to say 25 up until when he passed. So 42 years he was an officer, and he never once pulled his gun. Not one time did he ever pull his gun. And that's amazing to me compared to what's happening now. Sometimes you have officers that have pulled their guns 3 and 4 times within the same year. And it's ridiculous. Like, is that your only avenue of, diffusing the situation? I think I remember telling you that my father got an award from the governor for getting a kidnapped bank teller released from a kidnapper, and not even using his gun. So there's a way to handle certain situations, but it also depends on that individual person that is the officer. What is innately grounded in you? What is your morals and ethics? And you can't test that. You can't test someone's morality because, with these questions we have now, these assessments, you can pretty much sway an assessment by the way you answer because I know what you're expecting. But people always say, but the officers' lives matters too. But they're Black officers too. And when they go home and take their uniform off, they're Black. Their color doesn't change.
As your father found out when he got pulled over.
They're still Black. So yes, Blue Lives Matter. But in order for Blue Lives Matter, all lives need to matter. And Black lives need to matter. Because Black lives are Blue lives too. And they do take their uniforms off. And at the end of the day, they don't need to be concerned or worried that something will happen to them because they're not in uniform. And I think for me, the hardest thing to see and to witness now is that they have a weapon and they have a taser. But you never see anyone say, I tased him 3 times and he didn't stop. You never hear that scenario in any of these shootings. You've never seen a statement say an officer, I tased him 3 or 4 times. He didn't go down. Nothing. It's always shoot first and then wonder about it later. What did Tamir Rice do for you to warrant shooting him? Yes,
As soon as you arrived on the scene, not even stopping the car fully.
we have to stop using that scenario. I mean, it has to stop. You cannot be in fear of your life from a kid. Yes, are there children that carry weapons? Yes, but there are also children that carry toy guns because they want to play cops and robbers, because they want to grow up to be a cop. You know, no one raised their children to be criminals. You know, and I think because of how growing up, Black has always been something negative. Even in comic book, if you're the evil villain, you always wore black. You know, even in, school, in scenarios, what's pretty, this color or that color, and it's difficult to understand, but, I get so tired of saying it. Put yourself in my position. I don't want you to put yourself in my position. I want you to understand mine, because you can never be in my position. You will not one day in your life wake up and be Black.
Ever.
And I will never wake up and be white. So I can't put you in my position. I can't put your shoes on. You can't put my shoes on. But what you can do is listen to me and not assume that I'm lying or I am exaggerating, because these are my lived experiences. So you can never assume that. You can't be so cavalier and, oh, that's 1 in 1,000. No, it's not. If you have these conversations, these genuine, intentional conversations, you will know that it's more than that. It happens way more than that.
So much more. So much more.
And so, I mean, that's why I'm so glad you guys are sharing, because what it points out to me when we say Black Lives Matter, and our organization started because of George Floyd's murder. So this is all very pertinent. Thank God it hasn't happened to you, but what I'm hearing happens day after day, hour after hour, is that every Black person I know has had this dehumanizing, terrifying experience of a police officer in traffic with them, following them or pulling them over. And so that in itself is not acceptable. The fact that it diminishes your self-worth and your self-esteem as my sister, as my brother, as my fellow neighbor, that in itself is not acceptable. That's something I should be speaking out against too. Black lives matter. Black dignity matters. Black self-esteem matters. You are equal to me. So how does that, and it diminishes your trust in not just police officers, but in society in general, does it not?
Let me try to answer that transparently. I don't think trust is the issue. It's not a matter of trust. It's just a matter of, that's just the reality that we live in at the end of the day. Like I said, this has been done in so much perpetuity, generation after generation after generation. And the hard part that I'm going to have to face one day is I have 2 sons and a daughter. And when they come of age, they're probably going to have to walk in the same exact shoes, And I have to explain, yeah, son, yeah, daughter, I know it's horrible, but that's just the game that we have to play because, that's what they do. And then the stories come out, and then the stories come out, and it's like, the circle just continues to spin on and on and on. And it's just the reality that we have to face. But in the midst of that reality, bottom line is get your butt home alive at the end of the day. Because that is the cadence. That's, again, back to my story. That's the cadence. That's the situation that I have to run. I mentioned a bit about code switching. I don't know how much your group was talked about code switching or not, but if he came up to my car and he had his hand on his weapon, I would have to alter my voice just like this to make sure to let you know, under no circumstances at all, that I absolutely am not a threat and that I am a good, upstanding man in my community. And I will give you the driver's license, the insurance, whatever it is you need, officer, because at the end of the day, I got to get home to my wife and my kids undead or unarrested.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
And just for the
And
record, we code switch a lot. It's not just in interaction with the police. Like if you
yeah, that's life, you know.
you code switch a lot.
Yep. Yep. So my mother is retired now, but she's got two different voices. I know my mama voice and I know my mama at work voice. And my mama at work voice will blow you away.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Danita, how do you come out of a situation like that without letting that anger reside in you, without making it feel like you're not good enough? Do you have to build yourself up after that?
You know, after living Black for as long as I have, you're innately tough. It's just something in growing up and seeing it, especially in Mississippi, growing up and having to deal with a lot. You can't let it. You just can't let it break you, because at the end of the day, you have to go home to your kids. And you can't fall apart for your kids, because you have to, while you all are explaining the birds and the bees, we're explaining the cops. You know, we have to sit down and have conversations. Yeah, we talk about the birds and the bees, but we talk about encountering police before we even talk about that. Dallas is 11, and we've already had the conversation. Like, he's 11.
Yeah.
Like, he's more versed in police encounters and police brutality than anybody. We have to have those talks first. Do I want to have that talk with my 11-year-old? Did I want to have that talk with any of my children? No. But after every incident, we have to sit down and have a refresher course. You know, when Atiana Jefferson was killed, we had to have a refresher course, because it was like, this is close to home. This is just not outside these walls. This is close to home. This is a drive away from us now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's real.
I just want to say I'm so sorry, and I don't think it's fair. And what can I do?
You just did what needs to be done. You listened. You let us speak. And you did not use your white authority or privilege to run what they always run with us. Either you know. Yep. Well, maybe the cop saw something in you swerving, or maybe he was just checking on because there was a van that looks like your van that was involved in the thing, and he just had to make sure any sort of what we call in anti-racism a white explanation to justify whatever action that was done, you know, against us, when all I was doing was trying to go to freaking Costco, you know. Because no matter what happens, there's always this need to want to explain and to diffuse the situation and to tell us, okay, maybe you're overreacting a little bit. Maybe that's not what this cop was doing. Maybe this cop just so happened to go that route and he ended up behind you. Any measure of justification brought to the surface and put on the table, that is a thing that we see too often white people trying to explain to us instead of listening to our cries and hearing our hearts.
You're trying to tell me
this time, yeah.
You're telling me what? You're telling me that what I just encountered didn't happen the way I witnessed it in my own first person.
Right.
You're telling me, right, exactly. You're trying to gaslight me. I know what just happened. You sure? Are you sure? I don't think that's what they meant.
Yeah.
You weren't there. I was there. I know how I felt. I know how the correspondence went back and forth. So I know what happened. And the worst possible thing, if you're a white ally, is try to tell me what I didn't feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So letting you
Yeah,
tell
you do that, you're canceled. You are canceled, period. In my own organization that I'm involved with the great Maggie Anderson, we had a situation where we had to um, pretty much boot out someone for doing just that. They just were not trying to hear anything that we were saying, and yet calling themselves an ally, but was not hearing our hearts and trying to bring forth a narrative that in all of this, we as Black people have a measure of complicity in what's being done that we need to take ownership of too. No, absolutely not.
No, we're in a position right now where we just need to be hearing your stories, and we need to believe you. Just believe you that you are authentically who you say you are, and that your feelings are authentic and your experience is what it is. And then we can't move forward until we do that. We can't move forward until we recognize you, our brothers and sisters. So
No
But
one,
look at how long that has taken, Laurie
no one
and
can,
Danita.
no one can understand a Black person's struggle if you don't listen to a Black person. You can go to all the workshops in the world, get all the certifications and inclusion and diversity that you want.
Read the
But if
books.
you cannot sit down and listen without judgment, listen without trying to white explain, then you have done yourself no justice.
I'm laughing because there was an SNL commercial. Well, I'll have to show you guys where it's for an empathy drink to understand, for a white person to understand what it's like to be a Black person, and the person is not brave enough to take it. and so, because I mean, how awful would that feel for me to have to really go there? So anyway, yeah.
It's
And
so
on and
in order for you to take that empathy drink, you got to first understand that you have privilege. And some people are not ready to understand that they have privilege. Some people are not ready to open that door and say, because they're quick to say, well, I got here because I worked hard. And I worked hard and I worked hard, and that's why I got here. And if you work hard, you'll get here.
And in this
No,
situation,
don't
I'm
work that way.
following the rules, so that's why I'm not getting pulled over. But yeah,
Yeah.
we can't say that anymore.
No. Well,
and to Danita's point, the work that I do in the anti-racism space, I know we rub shoulders because we've got a few members of you guys' group who work with my groups too, and we're all just tugging the same, doing the same work in different spots. My organization, North Texas Allies, has identified Latasha Morrison's book and organization, Be the Bridge, as our vehicle to explain to our white sisters, can't say brothers yet because we haven't had white men join us, but that's our tool to explain and to teach the nuances of all the dynamics of racism to those who have open hearts. And Be the Bridge's whole platform is all about you need to listen and you need to lament before you can even move to the what can we do situations. Because there's so many stories that have to be shared. There's so many stories that have to be told. And in my small groups that I run online via Zoom, I don't hold any punches back. I don't have that fear of intimidation about what if you receive what I have to say, what if you don't receive what I have to say. I'm sorry, I have high ground. I am the Black person in this group, and I have 48 years of experience in this Black skin, and I can tell you legitimate, straight up stories of
You're the
things that you
expert.
do not know, and you may not, and of things that you may not understand. But I will share those to you, bold, with full of boldness and with no fear. And you can either take what it is I'm saying or leave it. But at the end of the day, I'm bringing you my authentic experiences And I'm filling in those colors of interactions that you as a white person may have had with another person of color, and you did not understand why you got a certain reaction. You did not understand why that conversation did not go the way that you thought it needed to go. See, I as a black man can fill in that whole color um, to these conversations that you just thought were black and white. I can come in and give you the shades of gray and give you the different nuances to open your eyes and open your heart. And then you understand, and then your heart and your soul is able to make that connection. And that's what institutes real change.
Well, Chris, I'm excited. We've talked about doing some more work with you with the Be the Bridge this spring, so that'll be really nice. And we, I think I'm hearing, and I've heard this before when we had our book club on Trevor Noah's story. Just stories have the most impact. They really do. And so just giving more people an opportunity to tell their story. And for me, what a privilege to get to listen and for you all to be generous enough to share those, because they're not fun stories. And sometime we'll have to just share fun stories too, because that's the other part of the bridge, is building those relationships. And so
Yeah, as soon as you get the COVID vaccine, Danita, you make sure you bring Lori to the cookout. Bring her to the cookout.
I know.
Yeah, give her the whole gamut. Let her have the Coke in the bottle, the ribs, put on that Frankie Beverly, do the electric slide and do the wobble. Cast all of it. Because you hear the joy, you hear the tears, you hear the pain, but there's a lot of joy and there's a lot of dignity that God has infused in us that enables us to walk in this strength in spite of what it is we see in the reality at any given moment. You don't know if you're getting the car that's going to get pulled over, or if this interaction that you have with your white coworker is going to be the thing.
Anita, you're right. You got to be tough to have both. So you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
You can't let it break you. As much as you feel broken, you can't let it break you.
Yeah. Well,
because at the end of the day, that ain't changing. I mean, this color, these experiences are not changing. And thank God we are at a moment, because everyone saw 8 minutes and 46 seconds of abject horror and brutality, that the Band-Aid is ripped off. And so many people like you, Lori, and so many white women, I gotta give props, leading the charge to saying, all right, enough is enough. Even if our husbands don't want to, we'll sit down, we'll listen, we'll walk with you, and we'll share the stories. Right. And in that, in and of itself, has been such a healing moment and such a relief for us, that after 200 and some odd years as a country, 2020 is the moment we finally got so many of you to sit down at the bargaining table with us. Right. And what 2021 and 2031 and on and on and on, what the world our grandchildren will be living in, great-grandchildren will be living in, because of what we're doing now. Maybe they'll have it a little better.
Yeah, that's right. It's a long art of justice, but we'll get there. And
indeed,
we like to say at the end, Danita, we like to say, keep making good trouble. So
that's right.
I'm glad you're okay, Chris. And I hope you have a great afternoon. And we'll put this with our police reform unit and start diving more into that, and encouraging more people to take a look at all of this. And everyone's busy right now, but this will be here for people to discuss. So thank you.
Yeah, just make sure you tag me, because people the dialogue's going to get open, and hopefully the white allies in your group will be encouraged to ask some more bold questions, and we'll answer as best we can.
Yep. Well, peace, guys. We'll talk more soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Make good trouble.